afternoon, my name is Camden and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be going through my August wrap up. For anyone who might be new to my channel, I do a video like this every single month. I basically go through, update all of the different pages in my reading journal that I created, and then at the very end of the video I go through and give a short review for every book that I read in the month of August. I told you guys last month that I was going to redeem myself in August. I've had a couple of bad reading months, especially this summer, and boy did I ever. This was by far my best reading month as far as number of books goes. I read 12 books this month, which honestly is unheard of for me. But also, it was pretty good as well as far as quality. I read some 5-star books, I read a couple 2-star books, and then, you know, as it always goes, the rest fell somewhere in the middle. So, kind of mixed reviews at the end, as you will see. I'm just going through, I'm coloring in all the different icons to count up the number of books I've read so far this year, so adding 12 new blocks onto here. I also did not want to let a milestone pass without acknowledging it, so as of yesterday, I hit 200 subscribers. Thank you all so much for subscribing to this channel and watching this journey. It's honestly been such a fun experience for me to put out videos about my life and see people be interested. I was thinking yesterday about like how many people 200 people is. I don't think I could name 200 people in my real life that I know, so it's just weird to imagine like all of us in a room together and how many people that would be. Moving on to my did not finish page, these are all the books that I end up giving up on. This month I started and did not finish The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna. I talked more in depth about this one in the reading vlog that I posted in August, but I had some issues with the believability in this story, and also I kind of found it a little bit boring. As you can see, I'm also adding in the books that I got from Book of the Month this month. Book of the Month has been very hit or miss for me this year, but August was a good month. I got The Only One Left by Riley Sagar, and I did also get The Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas. Moving on to my representation and reading page. This was an extra goal that I set for myself this year to try and read more diversely, especially in the aspect of reading more queer fiction. I really knocked a lot of these ones out this month. So proud of myself. So for the first one, I did read a sci-fi fantasy with LGBTQ rep, and that was So This Is Ever After by F.T. Lukens. I also read a book with a sapphic relationship, thanks to the book Honey and Issues Guide to Fake Dating by Adiba Jagradar. I was also able to check off reading a book with a non-binary main character by reading I Wish You All the Best by Mason Deaver. And lastly, reading a book with bisexual representation, which was Heartstopper. Moving on to my summer bingo page, I did read a couple different high fantasy novels. I read Heart of the Sun Warrior, which is high fantasy, and I also read The Dragon's Promise by Elizabeth Lim, another high fantasy. A book with potions. There was a portion of So This Is Ever After where like a love potion or a truth serum or something like that was used, so I did check that one off. Thrillers, I read a couple this month. No One Will Miss Her by Kat Rosenfeld is a thriller, and then also A Twisted Love Story by Samantha Downing is a domestic thriller, but that definitely falls under the thriller umbrella. Family drama, The Shadow Sister is about a very like tense sister dynamic and family drama, so I thought that one fit quite well for that. And lastly, dragons. There is brief mention of dragons in Heart of the Sun Warrior, but lots of dragons in the Dragon's Promise. So check that off as well. And I did hit bingo. Very exciting. Moving on to my summer to be read. These were the books that I was hoping to get to in this season, and boy, did I fail at that. I'm really hoping to be a lot more successful this fall with sticking to the books that I pick out, but checking off the couple that I did, even though I didn't read the Gilded one, so that's really a cheat, but I tried it, so I'm counting it. Moving on to my August releases, just adding on the dates for the calendar. Gonna go through, write down all the books that came out in the month of August that I was excited for. This is always the portion of the video where I start going on a tangent about whatever I feel like talking about, because this is my least favorite page. So this time around, I wanted to talk to you guys about next year's reading journal. If you guys have any ideas of things that you think I should include, let me know in the comments down below, because I'm in the process of making it currently. I think a lot of the elements will stay the same. I'm still gonna keep the same book tracker page. I love that page so much. I'm gonna keep it divided out seasonally. I'm gonna keep the TBR page, the bookshelf page where I add in the individual books. That seems to be a huge hit with everybody. I think I'm gonna take out the page that I'm talking over right now and add some new things in as well. So if you guys have any suggestions of things that you think would be cool in next year's reading journal, I would love to hear them. And I'm planning on doing like a little video with a tour of the reading journal before we kick things off in January of next year. Moving on to everybody's favorite, this is the bookshelf. I use markers to make little labels of each of the books I read, and I put them on a little bookshelf to display all the books that I read within that season. I made it partway through this page before my camera battery died, and as you will see, it was dark by the time that battery was charged again, enough for me to continue on. So here's the final bookshelf. This is going to be the last time you see this one because summer is over. So it looks pretty full. I'm quite pleased with how it turned out. Moving on to the reviews. I apologize in advance so much because I am an idiot and I had the camera set to autofocus, which is a big no-no. I always know to do it on manual focus, especially when my hand's moving quickly in and out. And I forgot to fix it today, so you will see the camera kind of struggling to focus at various points, and it gets blurry and it gets better, and I'm just really sorry about that. I did not have the option to go back and do it all again. So regardless, moving on to the first review, this was Heart of the Sun Warrior by Sue Tan. This is the second book in, I want to say it's called the Celestial Empire duology. First book is Daughter of the Moon Goddess, which was super hyped last year and this year. I enjoyed the first book a lot. However, this book fell super short for me. I don't know what it is about me. I just always vibe so well with first books, but when it comes to the second and third books in a series, they just lose so much of their charm, and it's like straight down to business in a way that kind of takes away everything I love about a story. The relationships were so much more high stakes in this one, the battles were more high stakes, and the fun and joy of the first novel felt like it was completely taken away from me, so I ended up giving this one a 2-star. I did not like the ending, did not like where the progression of the relationship ended up. I was very disappointed. Moving on to another somewhat failed sequel in a duology. The next book I read was The Dragon's Promise by Elizabeth Lim. first book is Six Crimson Cranes. Loved it. Loved the brother-sister vibes. Loved the cursed by your stepmother vibes. Loved the trying to figure things out and prevent the kingdom from falling into ruin vibes. Loved the getting to know you and falling in love with you vibes. However, again, everything became so much more high stakes and serious, and the charming parts of the plot were kind of removed for me. I felt like there was not enough screen time from the brothers in this book, and they were such a fun and interesting part of the first book. So that was disappointing for me. Overall, I gave this one a 3-star. I did enjoy the ending, so I feel like it got a star for that as opposed to Heart of the Sun Warrior, but overall, I feel like it could have been better. The next book that I read in the month of August was The Shadow Sister by Lily Mead. This was my first 5-star book of the month, which was very exciting, especially because this is a debut novel. It's always so exciting to find a 5-star debut and just get so excited at the possibility of seeing this author pop up again and again and again in the future. So always love it when an author comes right out of the gates swinging. This book is following two sisters named Sutton and Casey, and at the beginning of this book, Sutton has gone missing, and her whole family, including her sister Casey, are trying to figure out what might have happened to her and put on a brave face for the media as the search is getting more and more desperate to find her. However, Casey is really struggling with this because she and Sutton have a very tense relationship. They do not get along very well at all, and Casey can't help but feel like Sutton's disappearance is just another one of her stunts. Only a few chapters into this book, Sutton does reappear, but things are definitely different. She's acting very strangely, and the only person that she recognizes is Casey. She doesn't have any other memories of her life. The examination of these two girls' relationships with each other is super interesting. There's a lot of mysterious and speculative elements to this book, and I just enjoyed every single reveal that we got throughout this one. It was such a fun read, and I can't wait to see what Lily Mead writes next. I highly recommend this one to all of you. Next is with The Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. This book is following a main character named Imani, who is a teen mom, and she's also obsessed with cooking and coming up with her own culinary creations. I really loved the cooking aspect in this book, but also the teen mom aspect. I felt like this subject is not something that you see commonly in YA books, and I thought it was handled very well and delicately. Imani is a character that you just cannot help but root for, and I thought watching her journey and her progression throughout this story was just delightful. Elizabeth Acevedo's writing is also so incredibly beautiful and lyrical. She has a strong poetry background. Most of her other books are written in verse, and the way she writes just paints such a picture for me. And even the way that she narrates her audiobooks is like so top tier. So I always love picking up her books. After that, I read So This Is Ever After by F.T. Lukens. This is a queer fantasy novel with a play on the typical chosen one trope. At the very beginning of this book, our main character, Eric, is completing his year-long quest by killing the evil overlord. However, this book is about everything that happens afterwards. So basically, he's kind of thrust into this role of needing to be the new ruler and also fulfill like an ancient law that says he needs to be paired with someone or married to someone or like bind his soul to another person in order to remain alive. So throughout the course of this book, him and his friends and fellow questers are just trying to figure out how to rule a kingdom, how to kind of gain the trust of the people who have been ruled by someone who was evil for the past 100 years. And he's also trying to find someone to rule beside him and be his love interest. He has an intense crush on his best friend Matt, though, so there is a male-male romance aspect to this one as well. Overall, I thought this book was super fun and funny, but a little bit hokey. And I think if you don't like the miscommunication trope, you might want to avoid this one. It was heavily featured throughout. Next, I read a thriller called No One Will Miss Her by Kat Rosenfeld. This book had such an interesting setting and setup to it. I was super engaged from the very beginning of this book as we're following the victim, whose name is Lizzie Willette. At the very beginning of this book, her body is found in a trailer in a burned down junkyard. Throughout the course of the book, we're getting her perspective on her own death and how the townspeople treated her like their local pariah. I feel like Lizzie was a very sympathetic main character. You definitely feel for her and how her reputation was larger than life and her sins were always magnified and her assets were diminished by the people around her. I felt like the story had so much potential, but in the end, the plot twists and the reveals throughout this book were just not believable for me, and that definitely dampened my enjoyment of it. I ended up giving it a 3-star though, because the end sequences couldn't fully remove all the enjoyment I had just going on this journey and learning more about Lizzie's character in the first 250 pages of this book. The next book that I read in August was Psyche and Eros by Luna McNamara, and this book was such a huge disappointment for me. The story of Psyche and Eros is one of my favorite stories in Greek mythology, and I feel like it's the basis of a lot of love stories and fairy tales that we've seen come after it, such as Beauty and the Beast, East of the Sun, West of the Moon. Even really popular novels like A Court of Thorns and Roses have a lot of similar elements and a lot of overlap with original source material like Psyche and Eros. It's a very classic love story and it's inspired a lot of other love stories since then. However, I felt like this retelling absolutely did not do it any justice, especially when it came to the character of Psyche. This book took a very soft, loving, kind, gentle, and strong character and made her into a warrior and made her into a lot of things that she never was. This book just really fell victim to that brand of feminism that only values women who are girl bosses, are warriors. It just really bothered me a lot to see a character who is so strong in her own right, who has so much power from being loving and fights her battles with words and not with swords, and it just kind of suppressed all of the elements of this story that I have always really valued. So 2-star. Next was another fail, and that was A Twisted Love Story by Samantha Downing. This book is a domestic thriller, and it follows two characters who are in a very, very obsessive, toxic, twisted relationship. They basically break up and get together 5 times a year, and they constantly are pulling stunts such as trying to communicate to each other that they want to get back together by sending the police to the other person's doorstep, and a lot of really twisted, weird hijinks. In this story, they are basically getting together one more time, and throughout the course of the book, they are forced to kind of confront some mistakes that they made in the past when a police officer starts to dig more into both of their criminal histories and figures some things out and launches a deeper investigation into the couple. I did not enjoy this book that much. I felt like the plot was like a little bit lackluster, and every single character was super obnoxious and obsessive and annoying. So, 2-star for me. The next book that I read was What Lies in the Woods by Kate Alice Marshall. This author is really doing it for me this year. This book ended up being a 5-star, and I think I read a 4-star book from her earlier in the year. This one is probably the best thriller that I have read to date this year. I still think there's room for a thriller that's really gonna knock my socks off. As it stands right now, this one is in the lead. This book is following 3 women who survived an attack when they were 11 years old, many years ago, and it's following them as their attacker, who is in prison and was a serial killer, has passed away, and they're all getting back together to kind of debrief what's happened, and more thrillery events kick off from there. I like that this one had Greek mythology elements to it. It honestly kind of gave me vibes of The Last Tale of the Flower Bride, if that had been like a traditional thriller novel. It had those kind of storytelling, fantasy, imaginative elements to it that I enjoyed in that book, but much better done. The next book I picked up was I Wish You All the Best by Mason Deaver. This is a queer contemporary novel, and we are following a main character named Ben, who is non-binary. At the very beginning of this book, they come out to their parents, and their parents end up kicking them out for being non-binary and not being able to accept Ben's identity. Ben goes to live with their sister and starts at a new high school, and I thought that this story was really important. I felt like it had a lot of important messages and important representation. However, I kind of had the same issue with this book that I had with Loveless by Alice Oseman earlier in the year, which is that Ben as a main character was just not strong enough to carry the story. I felt like every other side character in this book felt more like a main character than Ben did, and I kind of preferred following all of their stories more so than I did following Ben's story. I know that sounds really mean to say, but that's just the honest to God truth, you know? Now, this book had real main character energy. Next one I read was Hani and Issues Guide to Fake Dating by Adiba Jaigirdar. This is the author of The Henna Wars, which I read, was it last year or the year before? Can't remember. This book was so much fun. I gave it 4 stars. I thought that this book had great bisexual representation and that the fake dating trope was handled pretty well in this one, more so than what I've seen in other books. I thought both of these main characters were super well written. They both were flawed, but had a lot of strengths, and their interests were delved into, and throughout the course of this book, we really saw their growth as characters. Both of them learned some valuable lessons throughout the story. Both of them had a lot of confrontations that they needed to have with other characters, and went through a lot of changes throughout the course of the story, and I thought that was excellently done. The final book that I read in the month of August was Heartstopper Volume 4, so as it stands right now, I'm currently caught up fully on the Heartstopper series. I gave this one 5 stars. Again, I don't think I've rated any of the Heartstopper books less than 5 stars. They're just so much fun. I love Nick and Charlie's story. I love their relationship. I feel like it's so nice to read a book where the relationship dynamic is never really in question, and the only struggles that we see our characters go through throughout the course of the book is external struggles. This book in particular dealt with a lot of different mental health issues and discussions. There is mention of eating disorders and OCD and depression. I thought that the discussions around how to handle these issues and how to get professionals involved and how to not rely on your partner were really important to have, especially in a book for teens. Overall, I had a super mixed reading month, but it was so fun, and thank you guys so much for watching this video. I will look forward to seeing you in a new one next week. Goodbye!